Welcome, friends. Let me send a chill down your spine and into your bones. This is the tale of the trees that remember. Do you dare to listen alone and stay with me to the end? The Scottish Highlands hold secrets older than memory itself. In the remote reaches of Caledonia, where civilization surrenders to wilderness, there exists a forest that locals refuse to name. They call it simply the Old Wood, a place where ancient pines tower like cathedral spires, their roots drinking from soil that has never known the plow. The air there tastes of moss and decay, thick with the perfume of centuries. In autumn of 2024, 5 friends would learn why the shepherds make the sign of the cross when passing its borders, why no birds sing within its depths, and why the trees themselves seem to watch with eyes that should not exist. Sarah McLeod was the one who suggested the camping trip. At 28, she'd grown tired of Edinburgh's grey streets and craved the solitude her grandmother once spoke of. That particular Highland silence that lets you hear your own thoughts. She had a nervous habit of twisting her engagement ring round and round, especially when anxious. Her fiancé David was the practical one, a surveyor by trade, always carrying his compass and maps, his methodical mind finding comfort in coordinates and elevations. Then there was Marcus, David's university friend, whose booming laugh could fill any room but who harbored a deep-seated fear of the dark he'd never quite outgrown. His girlfriend Priya was a photographer obsessed with capturing authentic wilderness, her camera an extension of her very being. And finally, there was Owen, quiet, observant Owen, who'd grown up in these highlands and knew the old stories, though he'd always dismissed them as superstition. He had a peculiar way of going still when listening, like a deer sensing danger. They entered the forest on a Friday afternoon when the October sun hung low and golden. The trail was barely visible, overgrown with heather and bracken. Owen led them deeper, past the last cairn that marked where sensible people turned back. My grandfather used to say the trees here are older than Christianity, he mentioned, his voice oddly flat. Said they remember things. Course, he also believed in Selkies and Kelpies, so he trailed off, but didn't laugh. The forest changed as they walked. The light turned green and submarine, filtered through needles that seemed to absorb sound. Their footsteps became muffled, their voices strangely small. It was Priya who first noticed the trees. "Look at this bark," she whispered, running her fingers over a massive pine. The texture was wrong, ridged and puckered in patterns that suggested something. She raised her camera, then lowered it slowly. "Does that look like a face to anyone else?" They gathered around. In the gnarled bark, clear as a carving, was the suggestion of human features, a screaming mouth, hollow eyes, the anguished expression of someone in their final moment. "It's pareidolia," David said firmly, though his hand found Sarah's. "We're programmed to see faces in random patterns. It's nothing, but it wasn't nothing." As they set up camp in a small clearing, they began to see them everywhere. Dozens of faces, hundreds perhaps, twisted into the bark of every ancient tree surrounding them. Some seemed fresh, the wood still weeping sap-like tears. Others were old, weathered, barely visible. Marcus counted 43 from where he stood, his usual joviality evaporating. "I don't like this," he said simply. "We should leave." "It's nearly dark," Owen replied, and he was right. The sun had vanished with unnatural speed, and the forest had become a wall of blackness beyond their small fire. "We'll go at first light." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in the tent, listening to David's steady breathing, and heard something else, a sound like whispering, like wind through leaves, except there was no wind. The words were almost intelligible, a susurrus of voices speaking in unison, saying the same thing over and over. She unzipped the tent and stepped out into air so cold it burned her lungs. The fire had died to embers. In its faint glow she saw the trees, and the trees saw her. Every face in every trunk had turned toward their camp. She was certain of it. The screaming mouths all pointed inward, the hollow eyes all watching. Her ring twisted round and round on her finger. Faster, faster. Sarah, David's voice behind her. What are you? Oh God. They woke the others. In the beam of their torches, the faces seemed to writhe and shift, though surely that was just the moving light. We're leaving, Marcus said, his voice high and tight. Now, I don't care if it's dark. But Owen was standing at the edge of the clearing, perfectly still in that deer-like way of his. Someone's missing, he said quietly. Count. 4. There were only 4 of them. Priya was gone. They searched, calling her name until their throats were raw. They found her camera first, lying in the moss, its screen cracked. The last photo showed a close-up of bark, and in that bark, a face they recognized, old Mrs. Henderson, who'd gone missing 3 years ago while hiking. The photo before showed another face, and another. Priya had been documenting them all. They found her at dawn, or what was left of her. She stood pressed against a pine tree at the clearing's edge, her body somehow merged with the trunk, her skin becoming bark, her mouth open in a silent scream. Her eyes were still human, still aware, still terrified. The tree was absorbing her slowly, and in the growing light they could see her features beginning to set into that familiar pattern. Another face, another memory, another record in the forest's terrible archive. Marcus broke first. He ran, crashing through the undergrowth, his screams echoing through the trees. They heard him for perhaps 30 seconds before the forest swallowed the sound. They found the tree an hour later. His face was already half formed in the bark, his mouth open in that same eternal scream, his eyes still holding the reflection of whatever he'd seen in his final moments. Sarah, David, and Owen ran then, truly ran, abandoning everything. But the forest had grown. The trail they'd followed in was gone. Every direction looked the same. Endless trees, endless faces, all watching, all waiting. David's compass spun uselessly. His maps showed nothing but blank space where the forest shouldn't exist. It was Owen who understood first. The trees remember, he whispered. Every life they take, they keep. They're not just recording, they're collecting. We're not in a forest, we're in a graveyard that's still hungry. They found the edge 3 days later, or perhaps it found them. Sarah stumbled out onto a sheep track, alone, her clothes torn, her ring finger bare where she'd twisted the band right off. She couldn't speak for a week. When she finally did, she could only say that David had stopped to rest, just for a moment, leaning against a tree, and Owen had simply walked into the forest, that strange stillness coming over him, as if he'd heard something calling his name. The authorities searched, of course. They found nothing, no bodies, no camp, no trace of 4 missing people. But Sarah knew. She'd looked back once, just once, before breaking free of the tree line, and she'd seen them. David's methodical face frozen in bark, his compass still clutched in a hand that was becoming wood. Owen's quiet features finally at peace, as if he'd always belonged there, and deeper in, hundreds more, thousands perhaps. Every person the forest had claimed across centuries, all remembered, all preserved, all screaming silently into the void. The forest still stands in the remote highlands. The locals still refuse to name it. And if you're foolish enough to enter, if you look closely at the ancient pines, you'll see them, the faces in the bark, the trees that remember, and perhaps, if you listen very carefully, you'll hear them whispering your name, inviting you to join their eternal record, to become another memory carved into wood that will stand long after the world has forgotten you ever existed. Some forests give life. This one only takes it and remembers and waits for the next visitor who doesn't believe in old stories. Sleep well, friends, and perhaps tomorrow stay out of the woods.
I